Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to How to Draw a Landscape with Mrs. Palmieri. Let's go ahead and get started. For this project, we're going to start very simple with a regular blank piece of paper and a pencil with an eraser. But I want to encourage you when you're done drawing your landscape to add some color to it. You could do this by going over your drawing with pen. And then what I like to do is use watercolor paint to add color to my landscape. All right, the first thing that we're going to draw whenever we draw a landscape is a single line that usually goes across our paper. And this is called the horizon line. The horizon line is a line that separates the ground from the sky. And we need that when we're drawing a landscape so that the people looking at our artwork can understand what's on the ground and what's floating up in the sky. So we're going to start with just that simple line going across the paper. It does not have to be perfectly straight, but a lot of artists like to make it as straight as they can, and they want it to be about halfway up the paper. So one straight horizon. Everything above this line is going to be the sky. Everything below it is the ground. And that's going to help us as we continue to draw objects in our landscape. So when you're drawing a landscape, you have a lot of choices about what you want to add, and it has to do with where in the world your landscape is taking place. I decided I wanted to have my landscape kind of inspired by the mountains and places like really high up in North Carolina. There's a lot of really beautiful mountains that I've seen. So I wanted to start from the background. On the horizon line, I want to draw mountains so that people know where this is supposed to be. So mountains go really high up into the sky. So I'm just doing a very kind of bumpy line. I like to use little tiny bumps when I'm creating mountains because mountains have lots of different rocks and edges and hills. And I put them above the horizon line because of how tall mountains are. They go up into the sky. But I also put them right above the horizon line because they're very, very far away. This is our background now. Background is anything in the landscape that is on the horizon line or farther away past the horizon line. So now we're going to go from our background and keep drawing forward, closer to the front. So because my landscape is taking place in the mountains, I started to try to think of the different things I would see in this landscape. One of the things I thought of is I would probably see a cabin or just kind of a small house. So I'm drawing kind of a triangle shape and then a little square below it, the same way you draw a regular house. I'm adding a roof and the side of the house. You'll notice this house is smaller than the mountains, right? Because the mountains are going to be tall. And next to the house, I probably want to draw some trees, and I have to think about how tall trees are. Usually trees are about the same height of a house. I like to draw pine trees in my landscape, and how I draw them is almost tiny triangles. I might go back later and add some more details. I'm going to do a lot of tiny pine trees next to where the house is. And keep adding pine trees. So this is now the middle of the landscape. Again, anything above the horizon line, that's the background. It's very, very far away. Now we're in the middle of the landscape. We're adding some of the objects that we can see, like the house, like the trees. These are in the middle of the landscape, and that is our mid-ground of our landscape. So as we get closer, objects are going to start being bigger. So that is because of perspective. You can try this out for yourself at home. If you were to hold up your thumb in front of your face and squint one eye, if you look in the distance, your thumb is going to look as if it's taller than a door, maybe even taller than the person sitting across from you. This has to do with it being so close to our face that it looks bigger. And we're going to try to do that with the next part of our drawing. So for this next part of my drawing, I decided to imagine I was in this landscape looking outside, almost like out my window, while drinking a cup of coffee. And I thought, well, if I have my coffee cup right in front of me, it's going to look really big because everything else is so far away, it's going to be tiny. So I'm going to draw a coffee cup here, kind of like drawing a cylinder. And this coffee cup needs to be taller than that house that we drew, because that house is so far away it looks really, really tiny. Again, you've probably noticed this yourself. When you're outside looking at something really far away, it looks really small compared to something that's in front of you. Right? Another thing that'll probably happen when you're looking out on a landscape, the trees and the plants that are closer to you are also going to be taller. So I'm going to draw a really big pine tree in this corner because it's a lot closer to me in this picture. Right? Draw bigger pine trees over here to the side. And this is when you can start adding more and more objects. But remember, any object that's closer to the front should be bigger than objects far away because of our perspective. The horizon line is really, really far away. Anything in the middle is a little bit closer. Things right up in the front of our paper are the closest in the foreground of our landscape. One thing that a lot of artists add to their landscapes to help people understand perspective is to draw a road or a path that starts off big in the front and gets smaller and smaller as it goes far away. So I'm going to add this to my landscape as well. I'm going to do a waving line that's a little path going out towards the mountains. My path needs to be big at the start and then get smaller and smaller as it goes further away towards the mountains. So you see how I made that line kind of narrower, kind of thinner as it got toward the mountains because it's going further away. It's wider here because it is closer. So this is a good start for my landscape because I have a very clear horizon line that goes across the paper. I have a background, which is the mountains. I have a middle ground, which is where this house is, right in the middle. These little trees are in the middle. And then I have something that's in the very front that shows my perspective, is this coffee cup. And I'm kind of imagining that I'm sitting on a porch somewhere or a balcony looking out on the landscape, out on the horizon. And this is when you can add even more things to maybe your background or middle ground. One thing I like to add to a background is wherever the sun is in this picture. Is it sunrise? Is it sunset? Is the sun going to be up here? Is it nighttime? Should I put a moon? I wanted this to be sunrise, so I'm putting a sun that is just rising up above the mountains. And then I also like to add things like birds. You could add planes. And I draw birds especially because in this picture they are in the background, so they're very small. So I like to draw them almost like I'm drawing the letter M. So what I did after this step is I went over all my lines with a pen, and then I got my watercolor paints, which I love to use. If you have watercolor paints, I really recommend using watercolor. I also just like watercolors because they're so bright. So that's what I did as my last step. You can use anything you want to color it in, but I want you to make sure that you're trying your best to stick to these steps of starting with a horizon line, creating a background, midground, and foreground for your landscape. I hope you guys have a lot of fun drawing. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.